Hello and welcome to another TES video web chat. I'm Ed Dorrell, features and comment editor here at the TES. No one will ever forget those two Super Saturdays during London 2012 when Team GB's wonderful Mo Farah ran two electrifying long-distance races to win double Olympic gold. But as we all know, especially us here at the TES, behind every great sportsman there's a great PE teacher. And as such, we are delighted to have with us here Alan Watkinson. He was the man who discovered, nurtured and showed the way to Mo himself. So if you've got any questions for Alan over the next half hour or so, on Mo or anything else PE related for that matter, please don't be afraid to email them to webchat@tes.co.uk or tweet them using the hashtag TSChat. But I'm going to start with one of my own because I can't resist it. I'm going to ask you about you, Alan. Tell me about your background. What sport did you play, and why did you become a PE teacher?
I was a cricketer of reasonable standard. I played in one of the Yorkshire leagues, and I played some hockey as well. I just played hockey to a county standard. Never quite good enough to make it professionally, much to my dismay. I just loved sport from day one, and the experiences I had at my secondary school, which was in Nottinghamshire, a school called Quarrydale Comprehensive School, the PE department there were totally committed. I had such a fantastic experience from them that I was quite motivated to get into that particular role myself and see what I could do.
Fantastic. Where did you train?
Trained at a college that was called West London Institute of Higher Education that came from the old Borough Road PE college. It became part of Brunel University and still is part of Brunel University. Sadly, the sites where I trained are no longer PE and or education establishments, but it was a great place to train.
Fantastic. We've got some questions coming in. This one is from Craig, who says, how much of Mo's success do you think is down to talent, and how much is it down to hard work and dedication?
There's a lot been talked about talent and what it takes to become the very best, and there's a lot been talked about the X factor. and people trying to gain that quick access to fame, and I don't think anything is sustainable without the hard work. And you measure Mo's progress against that of some of the most successful Kenyans and Ethiopians. Yeah. And you can be surprised to why did it take Mo till he got to 28 to achieve the pinnacle when there's Ethiopians and Kenyans that are doing it at 18. And the answer to that is that his work was spread over a much longer period of time, and our system develops middle and long distance runners in that way rather than an early development, an early commitment, which can physiologically be damaging. But the Ethiopians and Kenyans have that even greater desire to reach the top and to get basically food on the table for their families. That they are prepared to go that extra mile at an earlier age.
Absolutely. This is from Claire, who says, how does the teacher-pupil relationship change once the pupil becomes more adept than the teacher?
Well, Mo
were you much of a long-distance runner?
Mo was more adept than me from year 7. So,
in terms of other pupils, I suppose. Then.
Yeah, I think from a teacher's perspective, you would hope that your pupils would end up being better than you at the subject that you teach. That's a dream, and if you get students that are that talented, then you have to work with that, and you nurture that. You find experiences and opportunities for them that are maybe beyond your capability. So, for instance, with Mo, from a very early age, I realised that my knowledge of long distance running was such that I needed to get into a coach at an athletics club. There was a local athletics club down the road, and I took him there, and my relationship was to develop that and to ensure that he became fully integrated into that, and grew a passion for the sport that he clearly was excellent at.
Yes. So, to some degree, you thought you were sort of almost a counsellor or a parent, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, it was a management role, really. He's got an excellent agent now in Ricky Sims, but you don't get 11-year-olds with agents, and it was important to get him to venues on time. He was sometimes a little bit tardy. It was important to ensure that he knew what was going on, what the level of competition was, how important it was to train and prepare. It was important, in his case, to help him develop language skills, and to work with as many agencies as it took to ensure that he was able to do what he was good at.
Fantastic. This is from Debbie. When did you know that Mo was uniquely gifted? You must have thought he was good, but uniquely gifted.
That's a very difficult one. Very difficult one, Debbie. Yeah, I think probably August. Yeah, or the summer before when he won the World 5,000 metre Championships. It comes back to a certain extent the previous answer. You come across a lot of students that show a lot of natural ability or aptitude for different sports, and unless they actually pursue them and take advice from teachers and coaches and work through that advice and show a real dedication and determination, it's like anything in life. You're not going to be uniquely gifted unless you do that.
Absolutely. Nick asks, were there any other sports that Mo tried his hand at? I read somewhere that he liked football.
Do you think so? Yeah. He's absolutely passionate and still is about football. He desperately wanted to be a footballer, and was a little bit reluctant to get involved in athletics to start with. He was just passionate about his football. That's all he wanted to do. So it's been well documented that there's a few elements of bribery along the lines of allowing him to play football before he went training and taking the football along with us to athletics events and cross-country events, and bribing him with a football kit for winning his first English schools.
Oh, wow.
But I think outside of football, he loved any sport. He liked to get involved in physical activity. It was something that he could do, in which he was very, very good at, athletically very talented. So I think hopefully all students will try a range of different sports and activities and choose one that either they're best at or that they enjoy.
Yeah. Did you have to break the news to him that he wasn't going to make it as a footballing pro?
I did that ruthlessly very early on. It was
not good enough, son.
I'd said, look, I know you love football, and I've seen you play football, and he wasn't as bad as it's made out, but his aptitude at football was based on his athletic ability. So yes, he's going to be a nuisance because wherever the ball is, he's going to be there. Tactically, it wasn't so astute. But you'd watch the ball hoof from one end of the playground to the other end of the playground in the 40-a-side game that was going on at break time or lunchtime, and within seconds he would be where the ball was. So it was fairly obvious that his talents lay more with athletics than with football. So I did break that news to him.
We've sort of touched upon this already, but I'll ask anyway. George asks, did Mo get fed up with training at any stage, and how did you keep him motivated? You touched on bribery, but it must have been a bit more than bribery.
Yeah, he actually has always been a hard worker. He's always been very sociable, so he loved the atmosphere of a sports club. So the athletics club was a very sociable place. He liked that, and the hard work ethic was always there. So he would go out and train, and if he was doing a set of repetitions, the last one would always be the fastest. He would really put in, a lot of hard work, and he was always tired. He that hard work ethic was always there, and he didn't ever really become bored with training, I don't think.
I think this is a broader question from Sarah. It relates to Mo, but I think you can broaden it out. She asks the tension between sport and academic studies. In the case of Mo, was there any? And you must have examples of talented sportsmen where you do get that rubbing up and down.
That's an interesting question, Sarah. For Mo, he struggled with language. That's well documented, and he struggled to access the curriculum. He got great support from the special needs team, but they recognised that his talent lay in sport, and they were very keen to promote that and support that. Hazel Hughes, who was the special education needs coordinator, would do a lot of work with other teachers to say, look, Mo needs to be out of here and doing more physical activity. We had a couple of lessons where he actually came out of the normal curriculum and came into the P department, did a bit more. But to come back to that question Sarah asks, research actually shows that those that get involved in physical activity and sport from an early age actually do better academically. And this is one of the problems that we have in primary schools at the moment, is that the level of specialism in PE isn't there because of the lack of amount of hours of training.
Sure.
There are some excellent practitioners, and there are people that I work and train with, with primary school teachers, and they learn very quickly. What is needed at primary level is that expertise and specialism that develops competent and confident movers. If they're physically literate and they can move confidently, they become more confident people. And more confident people are by definition more successful. They're not worried about how they look physically or how they're moving. And there is a lot of research that shows the two go hand in hand. In terms of elite sport, there are obviously people that have to choose between the sporting career and the academic. I think there's Lawrence Okoye, the discus thrower. I believe is going to Oxbridge or one of the either Oxford or Cambridge, and is unsure about what to do. That's a difficult one.
Absolutely. You touched on the primary school issue. How do you think you can improve that? I mean, my instinct would be, and it's a difficult subject, is there a problem with it being such a female-dominated profession at primary level?
I don't think it's so much that. I mean, there may be a self-perpetuating issue that when the people that are primary school teachers went to school, maybe their experience of PE and sport in Key Stage 3 and Key Stage 4 were not as exciting or inclusive as hopefully they are now. And that experience lives with them, and there's a nervousness about the subject that with work and with support needn't be there. And it doesn't help, I don't think, that on the Key Stage 1 curriculum specifically it says gymnastics and dance, and those two words strike fear into some of the practitioners. And it is more about, hopefully the new national curriculum will talk more about movement and physical activity and the amount of physical activity that students do. And when you're talking about early years and Key Stage 1 students, the more physically active they are, the more physically competent they'll become, just by the amount of hours that they do. And it doesn't need an awful lot of intervention.
No.
The more that they do, the more that you can observe them moving. And if there are problems, you can observe that there are problems.
Yes.
And then you can, if you can't intervene yourself, if you're not confident to intervene yourself, there are people out there that you can get in to look at and help with intervention and help you become more confident as a teacher. So I don't think it's an issue of whether they're male or female. I think it's just an historical issue and an issue that hopefully we can find some sort of structure nationally that will enable us to address the issue, because students, they say students drop out at 14. Their ideas are formed around physical activity by the time they're 8. And the research shows that it's 14 when they find their voice. It's 8 when they've made their decision, whether it's for them or not for them.
Yeah, of course. Well, we've got some more coming on here. Mr. Copper asked, do you think science and education can aid future students? Sorry. How do you think science and education can aid future student athletes?
Well, I think science is a huge area in sport, and is fundamentally part of any sporting qualification in education. I think it's interesting that Mo's development, and maybe there's something in this for science teachers as an idea that they might want to develop. I'm not a science specialist, but the fact that Mo's started to beat the best athletes from East Africa based on, yes, natural ability, yes, hard work, but also the fact that he's gone and found that extra 2 or 3% or however many percent by going over to America to train with Alberto Salazar, who has got lots of crazy schemes and ideas that are based around science and physiology. He's the Dave Brailsford of long distance running, and developing those ideas around science, has definitely helped Mo become the champion that he is. And I think students can learn an awful lot from the science of development
Absolutely.
of high performance athletes.
One Cali Kids asks, what is your advice for parents of kids with a talent? Is it too early to focus on one sport?
Ooh, there's a pressure from some national governing bodies to get students to focus on one sport from an early age, and I personally think it's good to have as broad an experience as possible. However, it's how that particular sport deals with that issue. Tennis, for instance, are very keen that tennis should be an early specialisation sport, and they want to pick up students from a very early age. What they are becoming quite astute at is actually developing and delivering a multi-skill approach to tennis. So the skills that they're working on when the children are young are skills that are applicable across a whole range of sports. And if they adapt that approach and the student can learn a love for the sport based on that approach, then I'm slightly more comfortable with the idea of early specialisation. But I fear for the idea that we've got Chelsea under threes or whatever. That's worrying because there's a whole world out there that people need to experience.
Yes, absolutely. Def Dotty asks, Mo is now an amazing role model for us all. I think that's fair to say. Can you put into words how proud you feel about him?
No.
Should have finished with the question, really.
He's an inspiration, and he has always been one of the most self-effacing, modest, charming, funny people. That personality has developed into what it is now. I've seen him since the Olympics. He's exactly the same, and it's hard to say you're equally proud of something that alongside 2 gold medals. But I am, and I've always said this. I'm so proud of the person he is, as well as the athletic success that he's had. To have a national, have an Olympic champion with those that sort of personality trait is such a great role model for everybody else, and I am incredibly proud.
Gary asks a quite related question. I think it'll be very interesting for teachers out there. You've touched upon it, but I'll ask it anyway. What was he like as a child? Imagine, a lot of teachers look at you here and think, would you spot him in the class? Was he destined for greatness?
Obviously. He was a little bit of a fish out of water in terms of certainly in year 7. I think he'd struggled with transition at the age of 8 into a Western primary school. That was difficult for him. And then coming to this huge West London secondary school where they were moving around a school, there were the odd element of student that was quite prepared to sit back and have a little bit of fun with the fact that his language was poor. They'd teach him a few phrases that they'd get him to repeat for teachers, and they would encourage him with his line impressions. And on 1 or 2 occasions he was set up. And on 1 or 2 occasions he was a little bit naughty. But he was always a character, and he had just had this passion for sport and this love of sport. And what you see now is a developed version of what he was then. Just great fun, and never ever, unless prompted, will speak about himself and what he's achieved. Which for somebody that has had the success he's had throughout his athletic career is something that I think is commendable. I'd find it very difficult if I had that level of success not to be talking about it to anybody that would listen.
Absolutely. Do you think PE teachers, this is from Anne, do you think that PE teachers have an important pastoral role to play within the school setting? So there's more. It's a proper teacher question, isn't it?
It is a proper teacher question. There's an issue there that quite a lot of PE teachers do go on to be heads of year. I was a head of year, and there's a conflict, and the conflict is the head of year has a huge pastoral role to play that takes up a lot of time, and PE teachers, by their very nature, need to be available to run competitions and run. So it's that's a problem in terms of school structure and school organisation. that I think people do tend to get around quite well.
Yeah, sure.
But there is definitely a pastoral role to play for PE teachers, and I think that PE teachers need, in some respects, a greater sensitivity than people that are teaching in a classroom setting.
The Brian Glover then.
Probably I've scored a few good goals in my time in PE lessons, but not quite to that level. There needs to be sensitivity. There's a whole raft of issues around PE and school sport and the situation that it puts
Sure.
children in. That you need to be really sensitive about it and ensure that children are encouraged to get involved in sport. You need to look at every angle, and then when they are, you need to develop that.
Yeah.
And there's a great leadership and volunteering program that was promoted by the Youth Sport Trust. That is now, if it were a tweet, it'd be completely viral. It's. I was fortunate enough to be at a Young Ambassadors Conference today. Tim Prendergast, a Kiwi Paralympian, was there. Told a fantastic story of his life. But those elements of leadership that are part of of sensitivity and their ability, students' ability to actually to deliver that, as well as teachers and to
so
grow
important.
that capacity is very, very important. Yeah.
Absolutely. Terry asks, what tips do you have for getting pupils who dread their weekly PE lesson enthused about the subject? I was going to ask a similar question actually at the end. What happens to the kids who simply don't like sport? What do you do with them?
I think they are a product of our system, and I think they're a product of we've talked about this already about primary school PE and a poor experience at primary school PE that doesn't give them the fundamental motor skills to be able to access a secondary curriculum, and that when they come across maybe a PE teacher that doesn't quite get it, then it's potentially a problem. Yeah. What we I think need to do is actually broaden the net as far as we possibly can in terms of what we offer students. We need to engage with the students and find out what they like, and there's a lot of that is happening and has happened. There's surveys that have gone out to all students about what they like, what they might like to see on the curriculum. A lot of school sport at inter-sport level and at participation level is now run by students. It's run by school sport organising committees, school sports, student panels.
Yes.
And that sort of thing is absolutely critical to finding what each individual wants. And I think it comes down to a personal level. If you've got a student that is so disengaged, it's a personal conversation.
Yeah.
It's it's conversations with parents if necessary, but it is how do you engage this particular student? What is going to make it work for them? And I think the more we can not firefight, but put the preventative work in at an early age, the less that problem's going to happen. And I notice it now. I mean, from when I first started teaching PE to what I see in PE lessons now, there appear to be far less students that are sitting on the sideline.
That's fantastic to hear. I should, at this point, it's a great opportunity to ask Laura's question, but I will first of all say, please do tweet your questions at the hashtag TSChat or email them at webchat@tes.co.uk. Laura asked, and it relates entirely to your previous answer, have you noticed attitudes towards PE and sport changing as a result of the Olympics? Do you think their kids who really want to get involved? They've seen it.
The enthusiasm is there. It's a little bit too early, I think, to tell what the long term, the long term benefits or whatever of the Olympics will be. But we've got a great opportunity here. And I think we've probably got about 6 months to actually put into place a programme that does latch on to what's happened in the Olympics and does inspire that generation going forward. We've moved a long way in the last 10 years, and I think sport and PE and sports moved along. And the build up to the Olympics has been a big part of that. And it's been really heartening. One of the great things, other than seeing an ex-student win 2 gold medals over the summer, is seeing posters saying "Inspire a Generation" and the amount of discussion about legacy. It's been heartwarming, and I think we have got a fantastic opportunity. And I appeal to the powers that be out there to make sure that we have a structure and we involve people.
Yeah.
Because that's any structure, any system is only as good or strong as the people that are
Absolutely.
running that structure or system. We need to develop people. We need to develop structures that get it right. We've got great strategists in this country.
Really?
Well, I mean, Lord Coe's not bad, is he?
Not bad at all, yeah.
Baroness Sue Campbell is an inspiration to all in sport and school sport, and there are others out there like Dave Brailsford. We have got very, very talented people who are very clever. We need to utilise those people and harness those people to put on the ground something that is really going to make a big difference. And 29 medals now. Why not challenge USA and China for the top of the medal?
Wouldn't that be extraordinary? Giles asks a very similar question, so I'm going to morph it slightly. Giles asks, how can schools ensure a lasting legacy from the Olympics? I would say, what would you say to schools about grabbing hold of the potential?
I think there's a whole.
Would you show Mo's video over and over again?
I would, yeah, personally. And I'd probably sit in the room watching it till the whole room's been emptied. There are a lot of images and out there from the Olympics, and there's a lot that can be used in that respect. But there are so many different angles that we need to approach this from.
Yeah.
And to basically involve. We need to engage with as many different people as possible, as many different organisations as possible.
Yep.
We need to work with health. We need to work with local authorities. We need to work with primary school PE.
Absolutely.
We need to work with. We still need to work with secondary school PE. Nothing's perfect, it comes back to getting the right structure. And I think personally that partnership with as many different people with a similar sort of aim is the best way to drive it forward. Definitely, yeah.
Absolutely. I can't have you here without asking you the question, and I should tell our viewers that Alan here is extremely involved with School Sports Partnership and the Youth Sports Trust. So what about cuts to the sports? David Cameron arrived 2.5 years ago, and Michael Gove, and pretty much straight away they abolished, or tried to abolish, the funding for school sports partnerships.
Yeah.
How is it affecting you? How's it affecting the wider world of school sports? Are you feeling it?
I think without a doubt. I mean, you can't take a hit of initially 168 million around the network that's been built up over a period of time without feeling it really hard.
Absolutely.
And the semi U-turn or a C-turn or whatever turn you want to call it didn't putting the teacher release funding, basically £7,600 was given to each school with secondary age pupils to provide a member of staff to go. Just created another tier of negotiation and discussion that really just takes away. The idea was that we'd take the administration out of PE and school sport, and actually I find myself now spending more time chasing money to make sure that the programmes can run, and less time actually strategically working on the programmes. I was really fortunate to have an outstanding team of school sport coordinators that the schools weren't prepared to let go.
Fantastic.
I've got worked with excellent head teachers who do get it, and they've backed us up and supported us. The local authorities supported us, health have supported us, the County Sport Partnership in West London have supported us, and we've managed to keep and develop a programme that serves our schools. The other key point here was that the head teacher at the school where it was based absolutely gets it and is passionate about this way beyond his school gates.
Yeah.
So thanks very much to you and Ferguson there. A name check.
Thanks,
unfortunately, there are other people that had equally talented and probably more talented partnership development managers and teams where the head teacher wasn't prepared to take the risk. And so we've got a very disparate system now, and we've got some people that are really fighting to keep things going. We've got a school games programme that, if that is standalone, is just not really good enough, and is it is an insult to what's happened in the past. I think it was a great shame that Mr. Gove came into the role and didn't look at it properly.
No.
I think he saw it as a Labour policy. he saw it as a labour organisation, and he just wanted to get rid of it. Now, we had a great network that would have delivered on things that are key now: participation in sport, the school games agenda, and we could have done without the disruption, to be honest.
No, exactly.
Having said that, we're in a different place now, and what we need to do is not hark back to what's gone, but look to the future and think back to the last summer and how fantastic that was, and to really engage with the politicians, and hopefully the politicians will engage with sport and school sport, and to build something up again that is going to carry on to create a world class PE and sport programme for our country, which our kids deserve. Absolutely. And also, sorry, I've lost my thread there. But it needs taking forward. We desperately need to move forward, to move away from that situation. And it is encouraging to see that Hugh Robertson's written into
the sports minister,
the sports legacy programme, a reference to school sport and the fact that it's not good enough at the moment, and that is really encouraging to see. And I hope that something can come from that.
Let's fingers crossed, eh? I've got a great question here from Nahid, I think, or Nahed. How should you respond to a pupil who has their heart set on a sport but just isn't good enough?
I think you should encourage them. I vividly remember as a child desperately wanting to be a professional cricketer, and 2 or 3 people really knocked my confidence. People didn't know anything by saying, "Well, yeah, what do you really want to do?" and that's completely discouraging. And I think we'll go back to a situation where hard work and effort can reap great rewards, and you just need to deal with it sensitively. So it might be absolutely obvious and apparent that somebody isn't going to make it, and they might have their heart set on it, but you should still encourage them. Yeah. And you need to be careful with language you use, and you need to be careful about how you deal with them, and you need to manage their expectations. But they could still be really heavily involved. They've got a passion for the sport to that level. They could be passionate and involved at a level that they are good enough to be involved at. And that for me, I loved playing sport. I never made it professionally, but I had a great time playing sport at club level. And so you've got to.
That's the culture to inculcate, isn't it? Is that sport's brilliant as a hobby.
Absolutely, yeah, quite right. And it's great that people aspire to that. And if they aspire to that, let's not knock them down to the extent where they think, well, I don't really like sport anymore. Let's encourage it as much as we can without. But I say, we do need to manage expectations.
Absolutely. There's a great question here from Anya, who asks, what do you think Mo can possibly do next to top this achievement?
Will Peace Prize or something? I don't know.
Do you think he'll win? Do you think he'll be? Well, he's going to step up to the marathon, they say, don't they?
Yes, yeah. He will ultimately do that. That I think is something that isn't any great secret. And I think initially the plan was to do that after these Olympics, but the success he's had on the track this year has made him rethink that a little bit, I think. And I'm not entirely certain, but conversations with him I've had have been around the fact that there's one World Championship medal that's missing. He famously didn't quite win the 10,000 metres last year, and I think he'd quite like to get the full set.
Do you think we'll see him winning the marathon in Rio?
That'd be nice.
Will he be there?
I'd love to be there. Yeah, if anybody's got any plane tickets or tickets for the marathon, then please let me know.
If there's anyone from the Brazilian government watching,
yeah, get in touch. I mean that would be just fantastic. Anything that he does now is going to be very difficult to top this summer, and I think for him it's going to be difficult. But he is incredibly motivated. He knows that probably he's not going to get an experience like that ever again.
Yeah, sure.
But he loves competing. He loves competing for Britain. He loves everything that it brings, and he'll leave no stone unturned to try and win that marathon gold in Rio.
I've got one final question for you from me. I think the audience would love to know where you were when he won those 2 golds, and then a question which relates to the previous one is, how do you top this?
I was fortunately in the stadium for both of the events. The first one I got through the initial lottery, which was a miracle. You know, I applied for
Absolutely.
lots of tickets, and the only one I got initially was that one. And a friend managed to get me a ticket for the 5,000 final. So I was in the stadium, and it was the most emotional. The two of the most emotional nights that you could ever imagine. The first one, was the most nervous I've ever been. I think watching any sport, and when he won that one, it was just absolutely incredible. It was interesting because after he won the World Championships last year, I went to a Youth Sport Trust training day, and the final slide was, "Don't let the last thing you've done be the best thing." And I thought, we just won a World 5,000 metre gold. How do I top that? What do I do? But I think my involvement in school sport now and PE has a much broader outlook. I spent a lot of time as a young PE teacher working with Mo, and it was very much work with one person. I think any impact and help I can give to anybody out there to drive PE forward, to be inclusive for everybody. So we've got a really broad pyramid that of people that love sport and are engaged in physical activity.
Absolutely.
It's a passion of mine, and a passion I share with an awful lot of people out there. There's so many talented, really good people working for the Sports Trust, working in school sport. I'm just really fortunate that one of my students has gone on to win double gold, so I get to speak to people more than they do. But there are so many teachers out there that are doing fantastic jobs, and the more that we can encourage them, that would be good for me.
No more Mo's in your pipeline then?
I'm not actually dealing so much with students anymore. There's a very good athletics coach who's head of maths at the school that I work at, and I'd like to think that maybe he might be bringing a few along that might put him in a similar sort of position to the one I'm in at the moment. But no, my role now is really to do as much as I can to facilitate. Yeah.
Fantastic. Well, listen, all that leaves me is to thank Alan here very much for joining us at the TES, and also to tell you all out there that on Thursday at 6 p.m. we've got celebrated children's author Anthony Horowitz doing a very similar thing. So make sure you're here at the same time in the same place. Thank you very much.